This is Jamey with Stonemeyer Games, and today I'm here to talk about my favorite game mechanism in Cry Havoc by Portal Games. Before I do that, I want to thank Meeple Realty for not only putting together a really beautiful custom insert for Scythe, but also sending me a copy of it, which was completely unexpected and unasked for. And just to be clear, I love it when any accessory company makes an accessory for my games. So I don't promote anyone over another. But if someone sends me something, I'm gonna show it on camera. I love that they put all 7 faction icons on the insert, and they really captured kind of the steampunk feel of the game by adding these gears. You can see these gears because this is a 2-part container. All the miniatures fit into these slots, and there's stuff that goes down below. And let's see if you can watch this. So I'm going to turn this little dial here, and this thing slides up to let all the miniatures out. How cool is that? Just thought that was really creative. So thank you, Meeple Realty, for sending this to me, and there are other components that go along with it too, but this is the big one. And they pre-assembled it for me. I don't think they do that for everybody, but it was very nice for it to come pre-assembled. I'll put a link in the comments if you're interested in that. There's also a Broken Token, does a really nice one. Insert Me Here does a different type of insert for Scythe, and I'm sure other companies will too. And I'm very grateful for anyone who does that. But let's get back to Cry Havoc, because that's what I'm really excited to talk about today. I got to play it for the first time last night. Watch It Played has a wonderful video for learning the game. I pretty much knew everything how to play after doing that. We all came to the table already having watched that video. We knew how to play. And there are a lot of really interesting mechanisms in the game. But my favorite, the one that I've continued to think about, I guess it hasn't been that long, it's been less than a day, but I've really been thinking about it, is the combat mechanism, specifically how you resolve combats. Combats in the game happen like if I move my units into a territory where you have your units, at the end of that round, we resolve combat in that territory. I won't go into some of the preliminary mechanisms because there's some stuff involving you basically lock opponents' units and your own units into combat, and that territory does not change. The status of it does not change, other than some other faction abilities that can affect it. I won't go into that. What I want to talk about is what happens when you actually execute combat, which is really clever. Basically, you have this battle board that has 3 different levels, and it's divided in half. So the attacker takes all of their units and they place them on the 3 sections of the battle board on the left side. So that's like the attacker side, just to show the difference between the attacker and the defender. The reason this is somewhat relevant is that the defender wins ties. Otherwise, you can tell your units from the opponent's units. But it does help you to remember who's the attacker, who's the defender. Defender wins ties. And so you put all the units on this battle board. The attacker goes. They choose where you want your units. So say I have 3 units in combat. I could put 1 unit on each of the different levels, or I could put 3 on one and 0 on the other 2. I could put 2 on one, and then 1 on another. And then the defender does the same thing. They have the defender has the information of how the attacker is positioning their forces, and the defender puts their units where they want on the battle board. Now, the reason this is really interesting is that each level of the battle board is kind of a different way of fighting a battle in a way. The top one is just brute force. Who's going to win the battle? Right? So defender wins ties, but otherwise whoever has more units is going to win the battle. They get to take control of the territory, their units stay in the territory, the opponent retreats at the end of combat. The second level is a completely different thing. The second level is about taking prisoners. So it's like instead of you going in to fight, you've gone in there to capture prisoners and to take them back. The reason this is relevant is that later in the game, or later in that round, you're going to get victory points for every opponent unit that you capture. And you might have those units for the rest of the game. You don't really know that. Opponents can buy them back for victory points, but you might just hold on to that your prisoners for the rest of the game, and you get a victory point every round for each prisoner. So maybe you'll put some units there. Maybe you don't think you can win the battle, but you're like, okay, I'm going to go down swinging. I'm going to take somebody with me. The third level is just kind of like a sniper. You're just taking out opponents after the battle. So, or after the battle for the actual territory has been won. So you have winning the territory, you have taking prisoners, and then you have kind of just sniping units. And you can only snipe the units that are on the battle board. So it's kind of like your fleeting shots as you're running away. You kind of snipe a few people here and there and take them out. And you get a victory point for each one that you take out. So all of these, each level is such an interesting decision. And what I love about it is that not only are they interesting decisions, but they're fast decisions. Combat does not take a long time. It reminded me a little bit of Forbidden Stars, which has a really interesting combat mechanism, but it can take like 10 or 15 minutes for a single combat. This does not have that. Two other interesting things that are happening with this combat system. My main focus is that you have this battle board, you position units in 3 different areas on the battle board, and you resolve them. But you also have combat cards. So in the game, whenever you take a turn, you're spending 1 or more cards to take that turn. And any cards left in your hand at the end of the round might have a combat ability on them. Usually you've tried to save some combat abilities for the end of the round. And so you take turns at the beginning of combat playing cards. And this can really change combat. Like some of the cards let you move around units on the battle board. So maybe you see how your opponent places units, and then you play a combat card that moves the units around. Sometimes you can add units from your reserve. Sometimes I had a couple cards that let me do combat in the opposite order. So I would snipe first, then capture prisoners, and then probably win combat because I've completely flipped the table on the opponent then. So the cards do a lot of interesting, fun things to keep it variable, but not so much that it's so chaotic that the original choice isn't interesting. Especially since the cards that you use for combat, you could also just save them for the next round and use them for all the other things that you have to do during the game. The last interesting thing that combat does is that at the beginning of combat, you add a crystal to the combat territory. Crystals are one of the main ways of getting victory points in the game. So you're kind of saying, okay, we're having a combat here. This has become a more important area for this turn and for the rest of the game because the crystals stay there on the table, which is a nice little touch that I really like. After designing the combat system for Scythe, I've really come to appreciate how hard it is to design an interesting but streamlined combat system. And Scythe's combat system is much more streamlined. I'm proud of what it is, but it's not as good as Cry Havoc's combat system. Cry Havoc's combat system is one of the best, maybe the best that I've ever played in a game. And that includes Kemet, which is one of my favorite games and has one of my favorite combat systems. It's a brilliant combat system. I highly recommend that even if you don't get the chance to play Cry Havoc, that you watch a video, maybe the watch it play video on how combat resolves, because I think you'll be excited just as a gamer to see how clever this combat system is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Cry Havoc if you've played it, or on your favorite combat system in any game and what makes it your favorite system. Thanks.